I'm very honored, privileged to moderate this panel today. Thank you to Brand Innovators for hosting us. We have 30 minutes. We're going to get into a pretty meaty topic, which is kind of this overarching idea of what's happening in the consumer landscape today. And I think what will be really fascinating as we get into it with these three gentlemen are, what's happening at a platform level and beyond in ways that, people are connecting the dots, in particular for marketers like myself. So we'll talk a little bit about how we're getting a little more personal and really creating those deeper connections with consumers to drive outcomes. So let's kick it off with a little bit of an overview so we understand where everyone's coming from today. Dave, if you could lead us with, tell us a little bit about you, tell us what's going on at Snap, and how you think about, the modern consumer today. I think of an interesting POV.
Yeah, sure, folks. Nice to meet you all. My name is Dave Egan. I lead the apps business at Snap. I think when we think about the modern consumer today, we think, Gen Z really value authenticity. And that can be quite scary for brands because if you've created this really beautiful, polished creative and suddenly you're devaluing it or you perceive that you're devaluing it a little bit to be a little bit more authentic, that can be a little scary. But we found that the more polished, you can have polished creative and authentic creative. And just more recently, we released the Snapchat Generation Report, which gave insights into Gen Z and millennials that use Snapchat every day, and we found some very funny trends. So I think first off, we found that to be authentic, Snapchatters are deliberately shaking their phone when they're taking a snap. So when they go to press play, they're shaking it deliberately because they want it to be blurry. And as a result, they built an augmented reality lens experience called the Blurry Lens, which was viewed 3.2 billion times. Another very funny stat was the millennial in me. Like last night, I posted my dinner before I ate it. Gen Z posts the empty plate afterwards. So that this is a trend that we've also just recently been noticing. But it is possible. They really value authenticity, and it is possible to create both polished and authentic creative.
Great, thank you.
Alex Blum with Unity. I feel like I need to take just 30 seconds to describe what Unity is about. I think in this crowd, it's not so obvious. At a gamer conference, it would be very obvious. So we're the world's most popular game engine, which translates into over 80% of the mobile games in the world being built on top of our platform, over 80% of the XR games and applications being built on our platform, the vast majority of PC games and console games as well. And as a result of all that, there are 3.8 billion downloads of apps or games made on Unity every month. And there's distribution of that runtime engine throughout the world. And it provides for us a treasure trove of first-party data that we haven't yet leveraged in our series of ad products. Only recently did we launch an effort called Audience Hub, where we take advantage of some privacy-centric technologies that would make it available and possible for us to then use this incredible data set as a platform provider to deliver personalized experiences and ad experiences. So that was a recent announcement. We're very excited about that.
Hello, Luis Rumero. I'm from Canela Media, and we are a free streamer targeting the U.S. Hispanic marketplace. And when we think about the modern consumer, we believe that all Hispanics are the modern consumer. They've been the modern consumer since decades ago. But the reason is that they're the fastest growing GDP in the U.S. We talked about gaming, we talked about social, and if you take a look at any of the stats, Hispanics over-index in both technology, in terms of how often they use it and how long they use it for. So when we think about the modern consumer, we think that they're younger. So the median age for the Hispanic marketplace is 30 versus the non-Hispanic marketplace in the US is 39. When we think about Gen Z, we think that Hispanics are 26% of all Gen Zers. So we are the Hispanic and the modern day consumer. And because of that, brands have to really connect with them Dave used the word authentically. It's all about authenticity with Hispanics. So we think there's a huge opportunity for brands, and all brands, myself included, Canela included, to really tap into the Hispanic marketplace.
That's great. Actually, you tapped into something I'd love to kind of expand on as well, which are just misconceptions, perhaps, about the modern consumer. You spoke about Hispanic audience and kind of the scale. Dave, what are you seeing? You mentioned like the blurry filter, that's sort of behaviorally how Gen Z is operating. But what are misconceptions you're seeing about this audience on Snap?
Yeah, I think that's that we've just launched a product called Sponsored Snaps that is an ad that you can deliver direct in messaging. I think the misconceptions were internal at Snap for a long time, that we said we shouldn't run ads in the messaging service. This is something that we should, while it's the most highly trafficked part of the app, it's not somewhere that we should really put ads. And we've managed to counter the misconceptions internally and externally by running some media there now with some really awesome execution. So I think one that really comes to mind was last Q4, we had Venmo run a sponsored Snap takeover that was delivered to every user on Snap. And when you opened it, it was Santa Claus sent you a message saying, hey, can you request $100 from me on Venmo and tell me why you deserve it? And we actually had to pull the takeover halfway through the day because we overwhelmed the Venmo team and they weren't able to respond to all the requests. So that is the power of advertising.
I didn't mean to. On the misconception, I think there's a huge misconception about the gaming audience and community. Most people envision it as the teenagers in the basement playing games, but it's really skews much older. And within the casual game category, for example, it's more likely to be a middle-aged woman who controls the purse for the household.
That's real. That's true.
So I think that's a huge misconception. The other thing is we found that if you're very responsible about delivering relevant ad experiences that do not disrupt the game experience, that free-to-use gamers are more than happy to have that. And so if you, as a brand, if you choose your ad partner and you're associating your brand with the types of games that resonate with your brand, you can be assured that that whole entire experience is a good one. And you have to be careful about that for sure. You have to make sure you're partnering with the right organization in that regard. But if you do that, that entire experience can be well controlled and managed. And so I think that's another misconception, that that's not possible in the mobile space in particular.
Great. Luis, I'd love to hear, a little bit more on, from a Canela standpoint, one of the things you mentioned is the way you're working with brands as well to really connect more deeply, right, from a streaming platform standpoint. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about how your platform and your product is really going deep to drive some of those connections with the consumers you care about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it starts first with authenticity, and we keep using that word, but
don't play a drinking game when we say authentic. It might,
One more. But you really have to. For us, it's about connection. It's not just about reach. I mean, we talk about scale, and just to go back to misconceptions, I think when we think about the Hispanic consumer, sometimes brands think that reach equals connection. And it doesn't, right? You can reach Hispanics, of course, everywhere. But are you really connecting with them? And I know that's true definitely in the gaming world. But it's true of anything that we do and develop at Canela. But it starts first with content. But after that, Hispanics are looking for more than just content and connection. So, we found that since they're over-indexing in terms of gaming, since they're over-indexing in terms of getting onto loyalty programs, we wanted to further and deepen the connection with our audience. And since we are AVOD and people don't need to come back to us, there's no subscription, we needed to find a mechanism to actually get them to come back. And so that mechanism for us, we just recently launched something called Club Canela, which is a rewards program. And the reward program is pretty simple. The more you watch, the more you earn points, and the more you get to unlock rewards in the form of content. but we can also unlock rewards in the form of brand partners. So we have many examples where when we just launched in April, where we've partnered with different partners, and the partners are really giving our viewers a reward. So that is the way that we try to deepen the connection with our audience.
Great. Oh, I lost my notes. Well, okay, you touched on, we've talked about the landscape. Consumers are shifting, they're changing, obviously being driven by, emerging audiences, by Gen Z. But one of the things that's happening is tech innovation, right, that's happening to kind of reach them. So I think this panel is really uniquely to speak about what's happening with AR and VR and ways that tech innovation that was more nascent in the past is now actually being used as a tool to really go deeper. So maybe Dave, you could kick us off with some thoughts there.
Sure. Yeah. At Snapchat, AR is literally our bread and butter. We have 8 billion daily AR engagements on the platform. And just last week, we launched a product called Easy Lens, which basically allows anybody to use generative AI to create an AR experience themselves. You don't need a Snapchat account. You just go to this website, Lens Studio, and build your own. It could be an example of if I'm Uber Eats, I could say, hey, can I have an Uber Eats delivery bag, a burger, soda, and football on TV in the background? Oh, and by the way, here are my brand guidelines. Can you incorporate those too? And 2 seconds later, it spits out 5 or 6 augmented reality experiences, which you can then obviously pay to promote or run organically. And Uber themselves consistently run AR as part of all of their campaigns and consistently drive double-digit lift in awareness and consideration. So AR very much still at the center of what we do at Snap.
So as I mentioned earlier, we're a de facto standard game engine in XR as well. And it's early days with regard to advertising through the gaming community for us. And the challenge there, the slight challenge there, is we need to invent new creative, as Snap has done for the broader gaming industry. And so we're working on that to bring that to the broader industry, but it's a promising future in that particular space. The types of creative things that you could do there are very unique and very different from, let's say, a mobile device or a PC experience. But we're just now starting to invent and experiment around that. So it's early days.
Yeah, and for us, again, Hispanics over-index in terms of early adopters to technology. But as a streamer, we have to be careful in how we use technology. We don't want to necessarily disrupt the viewing experience. So I think Club Canela for us that we just launched in April, we're innovating in a way that the Hispanic market hasn't really seen a loyalty program of that sort. We've seen very early adoption to playing games and gamifying the loyalty experience. And we found that over 70% of our games are being used on mobile, which we knew that we were over-indexing on mobile, but we didn't realize it was going to be quite that much from a rewards program. We now have, in 45 days, we have 11.7 million minutes watched in terms of content that they've unlocked, and we've had 12 million points earned. So talk about nation, I think we're very early on, and we're going to keep adding new features and technologies to our reward program.
Great. Let's talk about that for a second. So one of the things I talk about it with my team, we used to, as marketers, kind of thrive for things or that we're going to break through in called mainstream pop culture. And I think we're all feeling that has really shifted to subculture, right? How do we break through with the right subcultures, the right communities at the right time? And so I'm curious from your angles, you talked, Luis, about how you're evolving. I'd be curious to this group, how are your platforms, how are your products kind of evolving to better connect and go deeper with communities and subcultures in particular, and maybe with the lens of how you're helping marketers kind of connect to those things?
Sure, I can kick off. This is a quick poll to everybody here. What do you think is the most used map on mobile in the world? Google, correct. What do you think is the second most used map in the world? The Snapchat map. ahead of Apple Maps, ahead of Waze, ahead of everything else. So the Snapchat map has 400 million monthly active users. It's one tab within the app that actually in January had 40 billion, in Q1 had 40 billion visits. Like these B numbers just really get me all mixed up. 40 billion visits. What we've just done recently is understand a lot more about what the Snapchatters doing on the map. They want to go and say, I want to touch on Greece and see what snaps from people in Greece look like to plan my next vacation, or I want to see where my friends are going and see where they are on the map this evening. And that has led us to say, well, hey, why don't we try and make some money from this map that we've never tried to make money from before? And now we have a product called Promoted Places. And Taco Bell were the first brand to run their Promoted Places on the map. And they had 1 billion impressions of their locations within the first 2 weeks of launching. So we really find the map is a great way for Snapchatters not just to see what's going on in the world, but to see what their friends are doing, as well as now for marketers to take advantage of that.
So I mentioned earlier that for years we've been building up this treasure trove of data information about gameplay. We haven't yet leveraged it in an ad scenario until now. It required these privacy-centric technologies to become available. But through the Unity Audience Hub, you're able to create a very nuanced, targeted audience. And in addition to leveraging our data out of gameplay, we can enrich it in a privacy-centric way with other first and third-party data sources. So the marketers that are using Audience Hub very successfully are creating the most nuanced segment to target, and that's been very effective for them.
I think for us, we have a recent example is something that we did with Hyundai on this Canela reward launch. It's actually still may be up and going. And I would say the first thing we do is, again, talking about connection, is making sure that anything we do with our audience comes off in a very culturally relevant way and is resonating emotionally with our audience. I know those are heavy words, but the way we think about this is that we are the audience. So you talked about subcultures, like we're actually created by Hispanics for Hispanics, and so we're the experts when it comes to this, and we know that there's a trust that we can't break, or else we can't share that with our brands. So with Hyundai, what we did is through the rewards program is that we integrated a piece of branded content. We integrated the auto, but we did it through an influencer and a talent that's very big in one of our shows, in one of our programs. We knew it would resonate with the audience, and we just put that talent inside the actual Hyundai. And what he's doing is basically giving away his secrets. We're following him in a day in the life of this particular talent. And he's giving him his secrets, his favorite shows, etc. It just creates a bond. And it's done really well for us. It's the second time we've actually done this with Hyundai. We did it last year with another influencer and talent that we have. And so it worked so well that Hyundai actually asked that talent to become a brand ambassador for them. So for us, it's all about the U.S. Hispanic. That's all we do. And we try to do a lot of research before we let anything out. And so it's a trust that we don't want to break.
Oh, I love that you use the word trust. I think it's a really important one, especially in a world where there's sort of a demand for more personalization, but there's also a demand for more transparency. And so I know, Alex, it'd be great to hear from you how you're thinking about data and privacy and making sure as we sort of, toe dip into these new spaces that are, can deeply connect, that we understand how the data is being used and ultimately that the consumer understands that as well. So I'd love to hear what's happening at Unity.
Yeah, that's really important for us because, again, first and foremost for us, it's the supporting the game publisher, making a great game experience, building a huge audience, a community, and then secondarily, we are in the ad business, and most people don't realize that we are, and it's a very big ad business, but our concerns are always with the experience and maintaining that trust with the end users. So We have a form of consent for the end user that goes beyond just the fine print that no one reads, and that's really important for us. The publishers that are involved with this opt into this, and they understand how we're going to do this in a responsible way, and how it drives value to the game user and the game publisher at the same time. And we thought that was really important, that we have the technologies in place and the products in place to form that trust, not only with the end user, but the game publisher, before we started launching these sort of capabilities.
Great. Is there anything, Luis, or do you want to add to this?
I just want to add that, we're getting people to sign up, for Canela Rewards, and we obviously don't share that with our brand partners. I mean, we use it for ourselves, and we're able to gain information that way. But anything that happens off platform in terms of registration, so we can drive people to partners. So
great. Let's talk a little bit about, and I think you've all mentioned it in different ways, which is, ultimately, for a campaign to resonate, you spoke about emotional connection, right? There's got to be a creative connection to really break through, whether it's cultural relevance, whether it's just a great ad unit that can be highly personalized. So I'd love to hear from the group, what are you seeing that's breaking through on the platform, and kind of what's your perspective on just great creative that is kind of driving that conversion that we're all looking for?
Sure. For us, it's definitely storytelling via messaging ads, which I've mentioned already, but we've just launched. And I think what we were very surprised by is the receptivity of users to these ads, which has been very positive. I think for certain brands in particular, we had an example of Spotify, who for their Wrapped campaign last year had a snap that you opened, and then it was a message from Ariana Grande saying, thank you for being a fan this year. So that extra level of personalization and authenticity beneath the brand has been something that we've seen truly resonate. And this new format we're seeing have more engagement than some of the ads in our other inventories consistently over time. Normally you would expect an engagement spike in the beginning and then something to normalize, but this format is really on fire for us from an engagement standpoint. I think it's something to do with the where it appears and the mindset of the user in their chat tray when they're also receiving a message from a brand. The importance of that message is something we need to work with brands on, because if you want to tailor your creative to something that looks like the content that your friends are receiving in messaging, that is obviously advisable. And if you don't, it might feel a little bit juxtaposed to the rest of the content in that placement. But for sure, it's storytelling via messaging.
So in partnership with our e-commerce partners and retail media, we've been working to develop a shoppable, programmable ad unit, creative. We announced this several months ago with Walmart, for example. And the in-game purchasing is a multi-billion-dollar industry. But historically, it's been about purchasing digital goods and assets that have relevance within the gameplay. Whether you're talking about leveling up in a game, whatever, it's always been a digital asset that has relevance for the gameplay. In past attempts to deliver a different type of ad creative in the game experience, it's failed because it's been disruptive to the game. It didn't have relevancy. So the key to this ad unit is that it does have relevancy with the gameplay. So we're building it and launching it in partnership with game publishers such as Activision and others. And so as someone's playing the game, there's an opportunity now not only to purchase digital goods that matter, but also hard goods. And if you're a Walmart shopper, it's a one-click purchase through the ad unit.
Yeah, and for us, again, it goes back. We have something called Canela Studios, where we create branded content. So cultural relevance, again, not to overuse it, but I'm overusing it, really makes a difference. All ads work really well on us. We are 78% bilingual, so ads in English and ads in Spanish work equally as well. But it does depend on the category. So some categories, if you're trying to get deeper information on a particular category, you're going to want to tap into our expertise, our Canela studios. You're going to want us to help you either choose the creative that you're using, or you're going to want us to actually develop it for you. So we've worked with people, we've mentioned Hyundai, McDonald's, and Coke are three that are on the platform right now. But those are people that tap into our expertise, and they do it consistently throughout the year. So it's not a one and done sort of situation. It's a constant messaging to our audience. And again, it creates a deeper connection.
Great. So we've talked about kind of, all levels here. Let's talk a little bit about the bottom of the funnel, right? Which is, how are you really getting past, let's call it vanity metrics, right? To really, connect to results for your partners. So Dave, I'd love to hear from your perspective, how is Snap kind of evolving your tools and your measurement?
Sure. Yeah, I think if you ask me, I work with the biggest app marketers in the United States. If you asked me 5 years ago how they measured one way. They measured with the IDFA. Obviously, with the absence of signal at the bottom of the funnel, now all of these advertisers are also saying, I'm going to layer on an MMM read quarterly, and I'm actually going to work with House or Incremental to do a geo-lift test in quarter, or I'm going to ask you for a conversion lift test directly to work with you. So often days, my team are scrambling. They're like, we're being evaluated 3 different ways. How do we operate in this environment? And I think the focus has just been on signal. As much signal as you can share comfortably with all the platforms that you buy media with, the better we're able to operate with that signal, and the more comfortable you'll be that your media mix is best optimized across channels, all signal.
So Unity is all about bottom funnel performance-based advertising. That's our bread and butter. We do manage brand campaigns, and that's a growing part of our business. But mobile performance advertising is our core. It's all about the successful download and opening of a mobile game. And that's a huge business for us and a few others. The other thing that we're doing as experts in performance marketing is we're leveraging that experience in connected TV and other platforms. So in connected TV, the big sort of technical challenge associated with that was establishing the closed loop attribution that's very easy on a mobile device to do, but more difficult in the connected TV scenario. So we've worked with partners such as Roku and others to build out that capability to bring performance advertising, bottom funnel sort of advertising to connected TV as well. So now with either a private marketplace or some other programmatic mechanism, you can optimize a campaign, a performance campaign, across our curated mobile inventory and direct access to connected TV inventory with partners such as Roku.
I'll make this quick because I think we work in all the different ways as well, brand lift, reach incrementality, but we are being asked now for more lower funnel tactics. I mean, given what's happening in the U.S. economy or maybe global economy. So we work as much as we can with partners and the different signals we have. And on top of that, we now offer up a lot more. I think you mentioned the shoppable video earlier. So those are ad units that perhaps typically we would not have done in the past, and we're now being asked for that sort of direct connection to sales.
Right. Okay. I think we are last question, last opportunity. Advice for the group, right? As we head into the rest of this year and beyond, what advice do you have for folks in the room to drive some of those deeper connections with consumers? Down the row, yeah.
It's that you can be authentic and still have a polished creative at the same time. I think there is an opportunity for brands to get there. I think my absolute favorite example is of Wendy's when they first ran the takeover on Snap, which was a snap from Wendy's that everybody in the US got on a given day, and you opened it up and it was a snap of a Wendy's location, and it just said in the iconic Snap black text bar, saw this and thought of you. And it was a perfect execution that drove a ton of engagement, an example of how you can be both polished and authentic at the same time.
My message would be first-party data matters. The performance as a result of leveraging first-party data, both for us as a platform and the brand advertiser partner of ours, is extraordinary. And What I would also say is, if you leverage your first-party data, you first wrangled it, organized it, and your partner is telling you that you have to move that data to them, don't do it. There's other ways where you don't have to move that data. It's clean room technology, other approaches that would allow you to fully leverage that first-party data in a safe, secure way without having to ship it off to you-know-who. And so that's what I would recommend.
And for Canela and the Hispanic consumer, I would say that I would ask you to make a step, take your first step with Hispanics, and consult your professional expert on this. It's not a scary thing. A lot of brands are afraid to take that first step because they think it's something that's unknown. The Hispanic market is younger. They're early adopters of technology. And in terms of the GDP, if you take a look at just the U.S. Hispanic, we're the 5th largest GDP in the world. So, we're bigger than, sorry, France, we're bigger than France. We're bigger than Germany. We're as big as Japan. So I would say take that first step and consult your professional expert on this.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Tons of illuminating
Monica.
insights.
Thank you.
Great. Let's have a round of applause for the group.